couple of weeks ago, Riot gave us a report on what is happening with champions in 2020. There we learned about what is happening to Volibear and what kind of horror Fiddlesticks is turning into. But besides these, we also got hints towards the next two champions. We learned that both of them will be tied to a big event this summer. And from all the puns about blooming, it is obvious that blooming flowers will play part in the event. It makes sense since it is in summer. But then we learned that one of the champions will be masked, and that they refuse to die. Which, to be honest, doesn't tell us much. And to describe the other champion, they used very specific puns. They mentioned that the champion will be a jungler to fawn over. Of course, the phrase fawn over means to attend to someone excessively. But I believe that the word fawn on its own is the key here. Considering the event is about blooming nature, fawn, as in the animal, would make sense here. On top of that, it's a jungler. And a fawn would likely feel at home in the jungle. They followed this up by saying that it's been a while since they dreamed up a new jungler, which makes me think that dreams and spirits will play a role here. Now, if you sum all of these puns up, we have a champion who's connected to nature, who is specifically a jungler, who's connected to dreams, and who may look like an animal, fawn. If you approach all of these hints from the other side, the green glade in Ionia is connected to nature. Its theme would make sense for a jungler. Ionia has very specific ties to dreams, and we have already seen a couple of Ionians looking like woodland animals, specifically fawns, with the Green Glade protectors being especially suspicious. Not to mention the fact that even Soraka is connected to Ionia, although she's more like a goat. And on top of all of that, there is a side character called Cyric, who was there when Syndra got freed from the Dreaming Pool, and it was hinted that she might be a Vastaya, which would mean that this side character could be the next champion. And that is what today's video will be about. In the same video where I talked about what they are going to do with champions in 2020, following the success of Senna and Kai'Sa, they also mentioned that they want to try to turn more known side characters into new champions. So today, regardless of whether they fit the description of the next two champions, I want to go through side characters that could be turned into champions in the future. With that said, let me tell you, there is a lot of side characters these days. So even though I'm going to bring up a bunch of them, if you scroll down into the comment section, people will be bringing up a lot more. So the ones I'll talk about are just my favorites. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with an obvious one. For the longest time, besides Lucian's wife and Kassarin's daughter, there has also been Katarina's father, General du Couteau. The thing is that no matter how many times Katarina's story was rewritten, there was always the same big plot point where General du Couteau vanishes. With the newest update, it isn't mentioned in Katarina's bio itself, but you can still find it in Talon's bio, despite the fact that Talon is slightly outdated now. The super TLDR version of the story is that General du Couteau was the head of a powerful Noxian house. His first daughter, Cassiopeia, followed politics just like her mother, while his second daughter, Katarina, was taught the ways of the blade. Katarina's first mission as an assassin was to kill a low-born Demacian officer during one of the Noxian invasions to the west. Katarina was furious because she felt like her talents were wasted on lowborns, and so instead of killing her assigned target, she snuck to a different camp to kill a Demacian commander. The issue is that the next morning, Katarina learned that the lowborn officer she let live destroyed a Noxian camp and he almost killed Katarina's father as well. After this, General du Couteau saw his own daughter couldn't reliably obey his orders, and she could even endanger the Empire. And so, General du Couteau ordered her assassination. Katarina was able to defend herself against some of the first assassins, and she even brought their heads to her father. But as time went on, deadlier and deadlier assassins went after her, with one of them, who was hinted to be Talon, nearly taking her eye. So now, Katarina is technically on the run from all the powerful Noxian houses, while at the same time she works together with General Swain, who offered to help her, as he was looking for allies to help him get to the Noxian throne. And while all of this was happening, General du Couteau disappeared. Now, there are two reasons why General du Couteau could become a champion. First of all, it seems like Riot kept him as a character in the story for a reason. No matter what they did to him, it seems like they always made sure to make him disappear. Almost as if they had future plans for him. Most likely, this is one of their backup plans. They just made sure there is the possibility to bring him back, although it is not their intention right now. The other reason is tied to Legends of Runeterra. Before the game even got to closed beta, one of the cards had a different name. The Legion General was previously called the Lost General. In fact, you can still find that card under that name on the website with all the official art. Now, of course, if the Lost General kept that name, it would feel out of place. Noxus isn't known to lose officers. They usually die in battle. On top of that, this person doesn't look lost. What's so lost about him? I believe this is why the name was changed. However, the reason why this card got its name in the first place might have been because of Katarina. It would fall into her story really well. And in fact, Katarina's father was the only Lost General that we know of. So simply said, I wouldn't be surprised if Riot was preparing even more backup plans. And who knows, maybe General du Couteau gets his spot in League in the end. Next up we have to mention Valiva. Or maybe not Valiva specifically, but another Darkin is still very much on the table. If you don't know what I'm talking about. At the end of Varus' story, after Varus, as in the Darkin, absorbed the bodies of Kai and Valmar, he marched back to Shurima where he started looking for his sister. Now, a sister could have multiple meanings. Obviously, Shurima is where the Ascended were created, and it is where the Ascended were turned into the Darkin. So by mentioning his sister, he might be referring to his comrade. Just like a religious cult would call each other brothers and sisters, maybe the Ascended are all brothers and sisters to each other. So Varus' sister may not necessarily be related to him by blood. With that said, there is a theory as to who that sister might be. I wouldn't call it a good or reliable theory, but it is better than nothing. In the story Twilight of the Gods, Misha, who is a previous version of the aspect of Twilight, banishes some of the most influential Darkin with the power of the Chalikar, which is Sivir's blade. However, after that, Misha mentioned that 3 Darkin called Naganeka, Valiva, and Sebotaru escaped. We can assume that most of the Darkin were banished in the end anyway, since after this story, the Celestials launched a new campaign to capture all the Darkin. But the important part is that the story also mentioned that Valiva was a female Darkin, and that she had a brother. And on top of that, they were a spiteful duo full of vengeance, which surprisingly fits Varus really well. The issue is that this is the only clue as to who Varus' sister is. And honestly, it's not much. We just know that there are 2 Darkin, one of which has a sister and the other one has a brother. Whether they are actually related, we don't know. But one thing is certain. There was definitely a reason why Riot ended Varus' story with him looking for his sister in Shurima. They have more plans with characters around him, and I am pretty sure the community would be hyped about a new Darkin champion that happens to be Varus' sister. Next I want to talk about Yone, or Yone as Yasuo pronounces it. Now, I hate myself for bringing him up, I really do, but there is the slightest possibility that Riot will bring Yone back. I am not saying it would be good, I hate the idea of bringing back a dead character just because it would be cool. But especially since Yone was shown in Legends of Runeterra, people got curious about him. And some people even think that Legends of Runeterra confirmed that Yone is alive. Which, let me burst your bubble, Yone is still dead. The card only represents the past, just like how it shows uncorrupted Senna from the past. But unfortunately, this hype around a dead character is real. And considering how successful champions are when they are surrounded by hype, and especially if they are connected to other already popular champions, I wouldn't be surprised if Riot turned Yone into a champion. I would be disappointed though. As Riot mentioned, the next champion will be a masked stranger who refuses to die. And I hate to say it, but if you really look at that statement from a distance, it would fit Yone. But again, because I really hate the idea of twisting a story just for the sake of fan service, I want to offer you a better alternative. At the very beginning of Yasuo's story, we learned that his father was a stranger who got together with Yasuo's mother, and then he quickly left like the autumn wind. This means that Yasuo's father is still somewhere out there. And to me, bringing back Yasuo's father would be much more interesting than resurrecting Yone. Next up in line, we have Ledros. We knew about Ledros for a while now, because he was part of Kallista's story. In fact, he was the one who turned the story into an even better tragedy. But I didn't really consider Ledros a super interesting character before the release of Legends of Runeterra. It was only after we learned what he looks like that he became a lot cooler. Ledros is a character that was in love with Callista ever since the Kingdom of the Ruined King was still standing. He was there when the Ruined King traveled to the Blessed Isles, and he saw what Hecarim had done to Callista, and how Callista was slowly consumed by blind vengeance. Ledros' story is about his quest to bring Callista back to her senses. Even though both of them were turned into undead souls bound to the Shadow Isles, with enough willpower, a soul can still think on its own. But while Ledros remained free, Callista was fully consumed by the Black Mist. On top of that, Thresh noticed that Ledros was trying to free Callista as well, and he started mocking him that he will never win. At the end of the story, after many failed attempts to communicate with Callista, Ledros simply gave up. His own mind snapped, and Thresh won. The tragedy is in the fact that Ledros gave up just as he was about to succeed. The reason why Ledros could become a champion isn't because he became a card in Legends of Runeterra. It's more because how much effort Riot put into Ledros' design. Even before Legends of Runeterra was a thing, he wielded an iconic broken blade, where the broken part was filled up with undead magic. This alone would be a unique design for a champion. But with Legends of Runeterra, they gave him an amazing looking shield and a unique skeletal face. Overall, his design is far too good for a side character, but who knows? It might just be because he will appear in the Riot Forge game about the Shadow Isles. Either way, I have high hopes for the future of Ledros. Next, let's quickly go through Citria. I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone if we saw Citria as a champion. She already has more lore than most other champions. She has ties to other major characters, and we even know where Citria will end up. But I just want to say, should Riot release Citria as a champion, I do not want her to be released as another happy-go-lucky character. We already have quite a few bright-minded warrior champions. We have Braum, Poppy, or even Taric. Slapping another heroic warrior into League wouldn't do much. So instead, Riot can do something much better. Right now, they are giving Citria a really good story. It's your classic ascent to a hero. But should they release her at her peak, it wouldn't be special or unique. It would be just your typical honorable hero, Garen 2.0. So what if, right before Citria's release, there would be a twist, and her ascent to a hero would end with a fall to a villain? We know that one of Citria's missions takes her to the Shadow Isles, but what if that is where the heroic journey ends? What if this bright-minded hero gets twisted by the Black Mist? Or what if she survives the Shadow Isles, but seeing her comrades fall would scar her mind? I am aware that we already have quite a few Shadow Isles-y champions, but you can take it any other way. Maybe she survives the Shadow Isles and she ends up in Bilgewater. Or worse, maybe she gets saved by a Noxian ship, and after they bring her to Noxus, that's where they can torture her for information. Okay, that one might be too much. But League of Legends doesn't have a lot of major plot twists, and Citria could be a great one. Everyone expects her to become a hero, which allows you to do the unexpected with her. Not to mention that Citria's design is very plain right now. She looks like an ordinary soldier. So should she actually become a champion, Riot has to change her appearance anyway to stand out. So no matter what happens to her, we should expect some kind of a twist. And since we mentioned Citria, we also need to mention my favorite, Arjen, the Arbormark Mage. Now, unless you are a regular viewer of our channel, you may not even know who this is. So let me explain. Right after Silas broke out of his prison, and he set half of Demacia on fire, Citria got her first story. She was tasked to escort a mage from a neighboring nation into the capital city. This mage was Arjen of Arbormark. Since the Arbormark were allied with Demacia despite the fact that they were a nation of mages, they sent Arjen to Demacia to help them deal with all the rogue mages. It was kind of a fight fire with fire scenario. The thing is, Arjen became a really cool character. All the Demacian soldiers who escorted him were afraid of him, despite the fact that Arjen kept telling jokes the entire journey. Only Citria enjoyed his company, and she even became his friend. On top of that, it was the first time any of them saw a mage, and they all imagined mages as old venomous people. And yet, Arjen was old, but he was also darker skinned. He stood up straight, and he was really buff, like some kind of a blacksmith. Imagine Zillion if he also did bodybuilding. Just like Ledros, Arjen also has a surprisingly detailed visual design, and unlike any other mage in League, Arjen would be the only mage who is also a wall of muscles. I really think that Arjen would stand apart as a champion. And that's what designing champions is about. You need to make something special and unique. And Arjen would be a great candidate. Now, before we move on to the last character on this list, let me go through some honorable mentions. Unfortunately, he kind of became forgotten with time. But let's not forget that Miss Fortune has her right hand, a Black Ops pirate agent called Raven. Then there is also a recent character who is rising up in the ladder of attention, Scar Mother Vrina. After her interactions with Silas, she could easily become a champion as well. Then let's not forget about the Seal Sister. Just like there is Anivia, Ornn and Volibear, there is also a demigod of the seas. We don't know her name, but Ornn simply called her Seal Sister. Although she was just randomly mentioned, it was obviously an intentional window of opportunity, just in case they decide to use her in the future. And for the last honorable mention, literally any Cam Baron. Riot gave us this idea of Cam Barons, who are really powerful people that manipulate Zone from the shadows. And yet they didn't use a Cam Baron in the game yet, which I feel is a wasted opportunity, especially since we already know so many Cam Barons. There is Baron Voss who tortured Urgot, Baron Velveteen Lender, Baron Venture Spindlo, Baron Saita Takeda, and Baron Petra Grime. Seeing how all of them have augmented parts of their bodies, I doubt they wouldn't stand out. But enough about honorable mentions, and let's have a look at the last one. With all the recent Shadow Isles lore that came with Senna, and with the fact that Riot Forge is working on a Shadow Isles game, it would be a shame to not see the Ruined King as a champion. The Ruined King might be just about the oldest teased character in League. I don't think we have had another character sitting on the bench for so long, and honestly, in the past, I didn't even think the Ruined King would be a good champion. But with all the setup we got, the tides quickly turned. The first time we have heard anything about the Ruined King was when Yorick got his first proper lore. This was about the time Twisted Treeline was reworked. There we learned that Yorick was aware of the king, and he purposefully sent his ghouls into the mist in an attempt to find the king somewhere in the middle of all the ruin. Unfortunately, none of the ghouls ever returned, and that's pretty much all we learned. Yorick knew the king was somewhere on the Shadow Isles, but that was it. Years later, Hecarim and Callista got their updates and we finally learned the story of the Ruined King when he was alive. Then, many years later, Senna arrived. Senna revealed that the king is not only still on the Shadow Isles, but it is the king who is influencing all the lost souls. We still don't know what is the king's purpose, or what is he even doing, but that's part of the story. Senna and Lucian are traveling around the world hunting down the Black Mist and freeing all the souls that could tell them more. I have a feeling that this is going to be directly tied to the game about the Ruined King. There, this mystery will likely be solved. But what would be even better, if you really think about it? A standalone game about a character would be an amazing setup for a champion. The Ruined King would already bring some serious hype, but with his own game, the hype would be on a whole another level. So with all the characters we mentioned today, the Ruined King has by far the best setup. It is a known character, it's been in League for ages, Twisted Treeline was dedicated to him, and now a separate video game will start a whole new level of world building around him. So sooner or later, we better see him on the Summoner's Rift. We could also get Nora as a champion, but seeing how much people hate Yuumi, I don't think we need more salt on Summoner's Rift. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have Need mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.